You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome on, welcome all to episode 175 of Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Eric Reese and Nick Faria, the lead Eagles writer from PSN, one of our guys. How we feeling, gentlemen?
Fantastic. I got a bucket hat today, so I traded in the winter clothes for summer-ish. I don't even know what this is, honestly.
I'm a
in
little
a tank top. It's tropical
hurt.
inside today in the same room that it was last week.
I missed the Scully and I missed the Nintendo Switch headphones. I feel like that was your trademark style. Like
that was like
just,
2 weeks.
That was a pork. Okay.
That was like 2 weeks.
No, that was. I pull back every single.
Oh no! Here's the thing: those headphones were longer than 2 weeks. That Scully was like 2 weeks. So I hear you.
The Scully made a guest feature last week.
It was nice. I was like, this is about the only thing I have that still isn't broken, nor because I have like Kelly Green like a hat, but the whole whatever you call it that goes around your head, I guess the hat like the
visor thing.
Yeah, like it's you could feel it when you put it on. Like I guess my head grew overnight. I don't know.
I feel like I can't wear a visor, and I see a lot of bald guys wearing visors, and I feel like that just can't be a thing because if you walk around like aerial view of a guy wearing a visor that's bald, it's a bad look in my opinion. I just feel like it just does not make any sense whatsoever.
I think it's a difference between having hair and like you have to commit or not. Like
yes.
You can't be balding in the middle of balding to wear a visor. You have to be bald or have hair.
Exactly.
That's really where my stance is on that. But none of that matters because we got Nick on the show today.
Hello.
Hello. What's going on, brother?
It's a peachy time to talk birds. A peachy time to love the birds. It's just how it is. Very exciting time. Very exciting day, if you will, considering what happened earlier at practice. But a lot to get to.
Let's talk about Spice a little bit, guys. I want to segue back a little bit because I was on vacation last week. All right, I was on vacation last week, and Nick got a little spicy with me by calling me old, saying I look older than I actually am, and I'm very offended by that. He called me old.
You know, the funny thing about that is it's usually me going like, Nick, how old are you? And then like he tells me his age, I'm just like, oh shit, you're younger than I thought.
First off, let's also add some context to this. First off,
Brian, Nick hates Kelly Green, by the way, guys. I just want to put that out there.
Brian, let's put out the context. Are you over the age of 30?
Yeah, I feel like all the great people in the world are.
Okay, whether it's true or relevant doesn't matter.
That's not old.
I'm not saying it's old.
30 is the new 20, 20 is the new teens.
However, as a 26-year-old who was 6 years old the first football game he ever attended in 2004, when I hear that you love a quarterback like Randall Cunningham,
that's the reason why you don't like him. You're too young to remember.
My first expectation is you were around for that era. It was that was my
hell yeah, that's right.
But see, my thing is, and a little background context. My first football game I ever saw was Eagles Giants, McNabb, Westbrook, Dawkins against the Giants, and that's when I fell in love with the game. Because growing up, it was basketball and baseball for me. It was it was the Jordan era. It was like the Allen Iversons, Kobe. Like that was everything to me. Then I saw football, fell in love with it. So I completely understand that, but you still called me old.
I mean, you're older than me. You're older than me.
But so. I'm not old. There's a different. When you say old, you're looking at a 50-year-old man, not a 34-year-old.
And it was also because
Brian, you're 34. You're 34 too.
I'm 34.
Hold on. You're gonna tell me that
I'm 34.
I'm
How old do I
wrong in
look?
saying that you're old, but you are 8 years older than me.
How old do I look to you, though? Even though I just told you I was 34, how old do I look to you?
Eric, you look beautiful.
I give you like a 29-30.
He's dodging questions.
He is dodging questions.
As soon as we get off this feed, he's going to be like, Eric, you look old.
No, I'm going to say no. First off, I will never say a bad thing in regards to pork ever in my entire life. I told him this at my bachelor party 4 months ago. It's not going to happen.
Whoa. Time out. Pork got invited to the bachelor party. I only got invited to the wedding.
Well, yeah, because
now this is a whole other thing. Now you call me old. I'm too old. I'm too old to attend your bachelor party. This is where we're going with this now. Wow! Guys, great episode. I'm glad all you guys joined us. We'll see you guys next week.
Episode just how old we are. No, here's what I am. I'm new old. You're old. So I guess that's what he means. Yeah, that's what he means. I'm new old, you're old. I guess that's what he means.
I guess
that's the only way I can figure it out. Like in the same way where it's like people are like old rich and I'm new poor.
I never heard of the new poor concept. I never thought about that.
I'm from Rhode Island, so I'm very familiar with the Newport concept.
Facts. It's very true.
Let's talk football, guys.
Let's get in there.
I'm highly offended in this podcast by Nick, by the way. I'm highly offended. I might just, I might crawl into a ball and just lay on the couch with a blanket on. I don't know. That's how I might end the night. I'm very offended right now.
Not offended by a statement, whether it's me thinking that the Kelly Green should stay retired.
Now you want to talk about the Kelly Green. That's what we're doing now.
Whether it's me saying Randall Cunningham couldn't hold Donovan McNabb's jockstrap, or any of the others. And it's just offending you. So I can't really do anything positive.
Look, it's the 26-year-old in him thinking that Cunningham couldn't hold the jockstrap, and it's the Mets fan in Brian that you don't like. I get it. It's a crossroad. We can all do this all day.
I'm a Mets fan. What?
Oh, you're a Mets fan too?
That doesn't make any sense.
Well, how about this? If you're a Mets fan too, which I actually forgot, because I tried my best and I succeeded, by the way. Then I dislike you equally.
First off, you can't dislike me. You know you love me more than anyone else in this room.
One of few people at your wedding doing the Eagles chant and getting your back when everybody was, I don't know, Giants stuff or whatever it was.
Yeah, they were all Giants or Patriots.
What is a Giants chant, by the way? I feel like
I have no idea. It's probably like LO. It's probably like LOSE, lose, or something like that.
I don't know.
LOL. What happened was we were booed mercilessly. So a good 150 people showed up. I would say about 100 were just relentlessly booing them when the fight song came on. We didn't do a garter toss. We did a football toss.
That was dope.
Which I thought was a pretty unique and pretty cool idea. But yeah, so they played it. We sang the fight song, and I got booed mercilessly.
Nah, man, I was the only one in the back, man. Had the whole. I made sure I was like, I got Nick's back, dude. It'll be me and Nick versus New York. We got it.
Absolutely.
But
I'll never say. That's why I'll never say a bad word about Mr. Pork ever.
Even though Cunningham,
you're highly offending Drew in the chat as well. And Drew's
right to be offended.
He's loyal to the podcast.
Loyal to what? Loyal to the podcast?
Flipping the birds. He's loyal to Kelly Green. He's loyal to Randall Cunningham. He's loyal to many things.
Is he more loyal to Randall Cunningham than Donovan McNabb?
See, clearly, I think so. What do you say about Cunningham?
That is a fallacy in and of itself.
No, time out. Let's actually talk.
I'm gonna go on mute and let you guys debate this. Hold on.
I got this. I feel like that cannot be a debate, and I'm gonna tell you exactly why.
Okay.
Randall Cunningham's introduction to Eagle history, right? It was a phenomenal era for what it was, right? Now, the 90s were hot, right? The 90s were with Whitney Houston, where Tupac and Biggie, where football, to have a quarterback with his caliber of play was phenomenal to see. The McNabb era was also a great time in Eagles history because you saw a lot of winning to a certain extent, but they both ended with foolery. And I'm going to go back and define foolery right now. Foolery is when you do some BS, like I said in the chat, because I consider that to be BS. Randall Cunningham's BS was that he let his ego get the best of him. Donovan McNabb's BS was towards the end of his career, right at the Super Bowl. One, he partied too hard the night before while T.O. was ready to play his life away with a broken leg. And then his ego got the best of him that offseason, which ended up, the turnover to Michael Vick and everybody that sort, Kevin Cobb, who nobody ever wants to remember in their life. But it was all great times in Eagles history, in my opinion. I enjoyed both of them. I love them both for what they were. I also despise them both for what they were. But at the same time, you got to embrace it for what it is. Like, that's like me kind of just, how can I say this? Spatting on my ancestry. Just because, my uncle from 4 generations behind didn't agree with anything that I agree with now. Like, that's history, right? That's what made me who I am. This Eagles history is what made the Eagles who they are. And I'm leaving it at that.
So, and here's how I always respond to this, because you mentioned the 90s, right? Randall Cunningham is more thought of as a 90s quarterback, right?
Mm-hmm. Way before his time, even too.
Let me do the numbers here. Because I have them up.
If you call me old one more time, Nick.
From 1990 from 1990 to 1995 was when Randall Cunningham was in Philadelphia. He played more than 15 games twice, and he had a over 500 record with Philadelphia twice. He tore his ACL, obviously, in 1991. That was the precursor to one of the greatest defenses of all time. Won a playoff game in 92, and that is, to this day, his only playoff win as an Eagles starting quarterback.
And that's perfectly fine, but that's not what I'm saying.
But my point is this: how can you compare a quarterback who quite literally, and this is documented in every major piece of Philadelphia sports history, he quit on the organization that gave him pretty much everything. They quit on the organization because he didn't want to run the West Coast offense. And then what happened? He goes off, he retires, comes back, plays excellently with Minnesota for 1 year, and then pretty much doesn't really do anything for the rest of his career. If we judge Randall Cunningham's numbers, that's my outside cards.
Okay. Is that yours?
What is this?
I feel like they're warning you right now. That's the buzzer right now.
But let me just point this very clearly. We judge Donovan McNabb based on his off the field drama, I would say, right? Off the field drama, but also the losses in playoff games, right? Essentially.
No,
2003,
I more so judge him on like towards the end. Like he's, in my opinion, he's the reason why T.O. is not. Left the Eagles and prematurely to be a Dallas Cowboys.
And that's why I'm saying numbers don't. In my opinion, right now, what I'm trying to say, numbers are relevant. What I'm saying is they're impacting Eagles history with the franchise. Like, you gotta remember, like, kids who, like, for example, I mean, let's go a little younger than you, right? Kids who hear about the new Kelly Green and like learn about the history, they're gonna see they're gonna see Randall Cunningham for what he was at the high point of Eagles history. They're not going to go into the actual dive and like, no, I don't like this guy because he only played 2 good seasons. No, it's like, wow, like, a lot of people wanted to be like him. And Jalen Hurts and them even mentioned, a lot of guys who come into the game mentioned that Cunningham had impact, McNabb had impact. That's all I'm trying to say.
But if we're going to say that Cunningham's impact was greater than McNabb's or on a level of McNabb, how about we talk about the only other quarterback outside of McNabb and Nick Foles to lead their team to a Super Bowl berth?
Don't do it.
Are we going to talk about Jaworski?
Jaworski put Philadelphia sports on the map post Super Bowl era,
and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. What's up, Morgan? How you feeling, man?
I take Jaworski over Cunningham.
Let's focus on the matter at hand, because
you're outside of your mind. Anyway, well, let's talk about current stuff.
Let's talk about Myles Jack.
Myles Jack.
So Myles Jack retired yesterday after signing with the Eagles, and I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of us saw this kind of, not the retirement on the wall, but him not being with the team during the season due to the fact that he was falling on the depth chart. And we saw guys, Van Sumeren, Ellis, getting more playing time, doing more with their playing time. I feel like this sudden retirement has something to do with just the wild things that's been happening in football with injury-wise on the field. How do you guys feel about that?
As far as his contribution in the preseason and what I can make of it, he basically had like 5 tackles and mostly played in the second half, if not just the fourth quarter alone against the Browns. So at that point, once that became a point of discussion, I kind of figured something was going to be afoot about it, and I was minimally surprised, I guess, when he kind of called for a retirement. Now, like I think, of course he got out early, and I think that's where you're kind of pointing that about the injuries. Like he's like what 26 when at a retirement? Is that roughly his age? Like he's mid-20s.
He's pretty young. Yeah, he's pretty young. But my thing is like the injuries I'm speaking of. I don't want to say out of context. I was on a flight when all this happened. Was that wild injury from the weekend? The kid with the neck injury. I think the cornerback, if I'm not mistaken. Like things that I feel like had an impact on his decision. So abruptly.
And not just to mention, but the Eagles were getting hit with 2 injured. Like 2 people were carted off in that game. Yeah, I do think that has something to do with it. I don't know how much that impacted, or maybe and this could be a trend because I think of it this way: if I had money, like half of these guys do, I think I would get out ASAP. Like I think if you pay me $3 million and all I had to do is play 1 year, I'm out. Like. I know that's not the love for the game, but I also got $3 million and I can like not have a concussion. I'm out. So hopefully we win the championship in that 1 year, which did not happen for him. So but I think some of that had to play with it for sure.
I think Eric hit it right on the head with that last statement. Just the love of the game, man. Football is a really tough sport to play when you're not in love with it. It takes a lot on your body, it takes a lot mentally. And as excited as I was to see Myles Jack, like when vets know, they know. Listen, this isn't a rookie going, I don't know if I love the game. Like he's played it at a high level. He's competed. And so as much as, you want a player like that talent-wise, if he's not committed, I think that's just a case of him knowing himself. And, like, in a way, we might look back on that decision as, like, it sucks he's not on the team. But I think that if your heart's not in it and this is a team that's competing for a championship, like, you just can't have him in the locker room. And not saying that he'd be a distraction. He's a great guy and, like, by all reports, a great locker room guy. But if his heart's not in it, man, you got to say goodbye. And I feel like he's one of those guys that, like, maybe might kind of come out of retirement later on if a team needs him kind of deal. But, when you're a vet and you're kind of looking at the depth chart and going, I might have to fight for a position on this team. And, like, do I love it? And then you're seeing injuries on top of that. I feel like that just kind of is the straw that broke the camel's back at that point. He's like, okay, listen, like, it might not be for me this year.
Well, the other thing that I think you have to remember, and I think this is, I when I'm reporting for the Jets, I always say this: context is key. When you add in the context of Myles Jack, you add in the context of what defenses he's played in. With Pittsburgh, he did have over 100 tackles last season, but he wasn't very graded highly. He wasn't really that dynamite player that a lot of people remember him from Jacksonville. So for him to come in on a 1-year deal, the expectation is he has to stand out in a way that the Eagles cannot let him go. Under no circumstances can you let him go. And he was unable to do so, in contrast to someone like Zach Cunningham, who has stood out, who has played well, and whose pass coverage defense has been a lot better than pretty much any other linebacker outside of Nakobe Dean. So the context of Myles Jack coming in, competing for a role made sense. But the practicality of it is, yes, the love of the game matters and all that. But the writing's on the wall if you can't perform. And quite frankly, if you're not going to be able to make the team with the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that historically over the last decade does not value linebackers, so even average play gets you a starting spot, that speaks volumes. That pretty much tells him, listen, if I can't make it here, I don't think there's going to be another team that's going to want to look at me right now. I might as well call it quits.
And that does make a lot of sense, and I completely agree with that. Yes, and also to mention, Nick did just mention the Jets. Later on in the podcast, we'll kind of be talking about the outlook of HBO Hard Knocks on the effect of the Jets with Nick, because he's been covering the team so much so often lately. Let's talk about a player that's actually wanted right now and actually wants out of their current situation. So, of course, if a player hits the market for trade requests, the Eagles have to be in there, right? I mean, it's just rule of thumb. As Eagles fans, some people tend to think with the pockets of the GM, even though that's not coming from their pockets. Other people want, these big trades to happen. Jonathan Taylor wants out of Indianapolis. Jim Irsay made some wild comments that did not go well with any running back in the league, especially one of the top running backs that happens to be in his locker room. Jonathan Taylor wants out now. The Eagles, they do have DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, Trey Sermon. But I personally feel like this, and I think a couple of you guys might agree, but this makes too much sense to not happen, especially when you can make a move where, hey, they traded for CJ Gardner-Johnson and he walked. The Eagles, they're fine with replacing people. So if you're all in it for this year to make a move for the Super Bowl, why not have a backfield where you actually have Taylor, Swift, see what I did there, and possibly either Kenny Gainwell or Rashad Penny as a third guy, and just go all in. I mean, Jonathan Taylor is 24 years old. He had a down year last year, I think over a little bit over 800 yards on rushing. The year before that, he had 1,800 yards. He had double-digit touchdowns the year before that. I think it was like close to like between 16 to 18 touchdowns. He's an efficient guy. Behind this offensive line would be phenomenally dominant. I don't want to ask how what the likelihood of them trading for him is, but what do you guys think about this kind of move? And should the Eagles kind of pull the trigger for this move?
Depends. I mean, and I know what they're asking. So they want a first-round pick or a package that resembles that value. What does that mean as far as a package that resembles that value to Jim Irsay? Because Jim Irsay is kind of a loose cannon these days. I mean, who knows what he wants? He might get a bad offer and think it's worth the first-round pick, and then you make out like gangbusters. Or you might just get give a first-round pick and then have to shed maybe 2 or 3 running backs just to afford them. But that running back room would be ridiculous. I do like the idea of Jonathan Taylor and Swift being on the same room. Not just because I can sit here and say, "Oh, we got the Taylor Swift duo." Like that'd be sick too. But I just like the idea. It kind of reminds me of having that power duo like in 2017, if you will. And I know that's like, oh well, you're just going back to the last time that we had 2 big names. Yeah, I am, because that's kind of like relevant here. Like we have 2 giant names, Swift and Taylor, that can really just run down most opposing defenses. And by the way, Penny, he's still going to be a change of pace back. Like this offense, no matter which way you shake it, no matter if you were to get Swift, no matter if you were just to leave it alone, is going to be ridiculous. But I mean, it would be nice just to have them. I will say this though: the Eagles aren't the only team, obviously, in on this. The Bills and the Bears are making a lot of noise for Jonathan Taylor as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I love the fit on the offense, and I think a lot of the speculation or the the fan kind of murmurings or complaints are about how the Eagles are going to deal with the cap space. Listen, you already paid Jalen Hurts, right? You already have AJ Brown locked up, so there's a little flexibility there, and I understand you don't want to put yourself in a bad cap situation going forward, but that's not really my problem with the whole situation. I just think when you're looking at giving away a first round pick and the way the Eagles have been building this roster in the last couple of years, been capitalizing on first round picks. I don't know that you want to just give away a first round pick. You've seen San Francisco do that. You've seen in the past, teams like the Seattle Seahawks do that as well. And as much as it may pay off in those first couple of years, like I don't know that this is one of those moves that immediately guaranteed. Like if you're like borderline playoff team, or like maybe you have a shot at winning your division, this is a trade you make. You make it to win the division. You make it to give yourself a chance. I don't know that adding him to this backfield, barring an injury to Swift, just like gets you over that hump. I think the team they have is really talented, and if you can get him for a year, which is most likely they'd have him for a year. I don't think that they're gonna be throwing out the contract that he deserves or should get. You're just not going to get that in Philly with the running back, but it's just a tricky situation where like if you're not giving a first round pick, you're giving a player, and the Eagles don't really have like there's a couple players that are like maybe borderline, but just the way that the valuation and the way, again, like Irsay is saying, I just don't know that the Eagles have that guy, because like who do the Colts need? They might need a receiver. Eagles aren't parting ways with any of the receivers. Right, we don't really have anyone on the defensive end you want to get rid of, or like that trade bait, like maybe Derek Barnett. That's not going to get you Jonathan Taylor, right? So it's a tricky valuation. If they can make it happen, I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not worried about the cap. Howie Roseman will figure it out. You paid most of your key players, so I'd love it, but I just don't know if it's going to happen. And on that note, I got to run to a meeting. But hey, 10 minutes with you guys is 10 minutes well spent. So I appreciate you having me, and I promise I'll make time for it. And all the fans out there, I appreciate you as well.
Take care, Morgan.
See you, Morgan. So here's the thing. First off, and I disagree with one piece of Morgan's take. It's not a bad one, but there's a misnomer that he's going to cost a first-round pick. It's not going to happen. And even if he were to get moved, it will not be for a first-round pick for a couple of reasons. If the Colts were smart and the Colts management and ownership were smart, they would have been mum about the contract negotiations through the last 2 months. Instead, they decided to make everything public and iron all their dirty laundry out, which means you cannot go to teams and say, we want a first-round pick for this great back that we refuse to pay like a great back. Right. It doesn't work that way. So teams are going to look at them and they're going to say, oh, you want a first-round pick? Pound sand. It's just not going to happen. So first off, the idea of the Colts or of the Eagles having to part with a first-round pick, that's not correct. Even if they were to make the trade, it's not going to happen like that. They're not giving up a first-round pick. They won't have to give up a first-round pick. The second piece of that is obviously I don't think that he is the right fit for this organization for a couple of reasons. Obviously, he has the connection with Nick Sirianni, and that makes a lot of sense in that end. However, if you look at the teams Philadelphia has won with over the last 2 decades, they aren't being won. They aren't winning games because they're giving the ball to a running back 500 times. And that's what Jonathan Taylor is. You don't give him 10 touches, see what he can do. He's a bell cow, Adrian Peterson type where you give him 3 yards a carry, 4 yards a carry, 3 yards a carry, 4 yards a carry. The Eagles don't operate like that. The Eagles operate in 6 to 7 short bursts from running backs. They come out immediately for a different package with a different running back. That's how they've won. And that is how the modern NFL is going right now. You see the Kansas City Chiefs doing that. You see the Cincinnati Bengals doing that, the 49ers, the Cowboys, all the teams that are in contention for a playoff spot are using the running back by committee because it allows you to be able to use different packages with different skill sets. It doesn't make sense to carry a bell cow running back anymore because it's too easy to stop from a defensive standpoint as opposed to having many cooks in the kitchen and having to game plan for all of them. So I don't think he's a good fit for Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is a good fit for Philadelphia. I don't think that Philadelphia is even going to test it. However, if there's one reason why Philadelphia should, it's because you need to make sure he does not go to a competitor. And what I mean by that is the Dallas Cowboys, I understand Eric mentioned Chicago and Buffalo, but the Cowboys are remaining very, very quiet about the situation for what I've heard, and that's for good reason. They love what they've seen from Deuce Vaughn, but Tony Pollard's coming off a leg injury. We don't know how strong he's going to be to start the year. If they feel it's necessary, they will absolutely give up a first-round pick for Jonathan Taylor because they are the Dallas Cowboys. And they don't really care about value at certain positions and otherwise. We've seen that throughout their history. So if you're Philadelphia, you don't want to play Jonathan Taylor twice a year. It's just he's a bad matchup for your defense. So if it means getting him out of Dallas for a year and then letting him walk in free agency, that's perfectly fine. The other thing that we have to remember is the free agent class of running backs next year is loaded. Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, all these top running backs, top 10 in value, are going to be free agents after the year. So you could theoretically let all these guys walk for free and then get him on a shorter deal next year. So there is some benefit to that. However, I don't think it's going to happen because he doesn't fit what the Eagles need from their offense, and they need to be multiple as long as you have 2 of the greatest wide receivers in the modern NFL right now.
The only question I would have about that, and you make a great point, because I was going to say as well, looking at his contract, that he would be up in the air, so he's more of a rental, would be used as a rental this year before his obviously free agency. The hump that we're talking about is no longer winning the division. It's the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
So in the same way, and it's different clearly with context because obviously the depth of committee that we have now versus really in 2017 versus running backs. But why why not kind of use Taylor as a sort of featured or split, option like a LeGarrette Blount was? Because he obviously was somebody who helped get you over that hump into a Super Bowl victory.
And that's a key thing as well, because when LeGarrette Blount came, everybody was like, okay, like, he's a bell cow back. We're not the Eagles. They're not used to using him like that. And his key thing was like, I don't need that many carries. Just give me what I get, and then we'll make things happen. And it feels like that.
There's a misconception about LeGarrette Blount, though. We see him as a bell cow. He wasn't a bell cow. He was a power back, but power back and bell cows are two different things. Bell cows are the Derrick Henry, Adrian Petersons of the world who get 20 to 25 touches a game. That's not who LeGarrette Blount was. Blount was the guy who would get 15, give you 4 or 5 yards a carry, and then allow Corey Clement and Jay Ajayi and Kenyon Barner and Darren Sproles and all those different guys to be able to work with it. He worked within the offensive system because he fit what they needed to do overall. Jonathan Taylor is a much different back from LeGarrette because he's not just a power back. He is a true bell cow. Give me the ball 25 times and get out of my way. The Eagles can't do that. I understand what you're saying, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a common misconception between bell cow and power back, and it's fundamentally down the middle different from what LeGarrette was in Philadelphia.
I would like to see what's available next season if depending on what our depth chart is as far as running backs. But we'll get obviously to that next season. This preseason, we got Eagles and Colts. That's going to be in 2 days. Brian, do you want to go over part of the Eagles and Colts practice today?
Yeah, so it did get a little spicy according to certain reports. Apparently a defensive player from the Colts took a cheap shot on Kenneth Gainwell, and Jason Kelsey responded with his own little cheap shot that he instantly regretted if you actually listen to his press conference.
Correct.
But at the same time, it's kind of like that's the Eagles' MO, right? You have each other's back. We've seen it from Jordan Mailata. We've seen it from so many of the other guys always coming up to defend their guys, right? But this is interesting practice, right? You have Shane Steichen versus Nick Sirianni. You have the guy who was versus the guy who is, and Brian Johnson and Steichen as well. But to be honest, like the preseason game, the only value is really going to hold is that QB2 spot. It's the Mariota versus McKee. Like that's the key thing because we haven't seen anything good out of Mariota at all this whole preseason. In practice, he's looked well at times, but he's also showed what he's showing in preseason, which kind of sucks because you don't expect that out of a veteran like of his caliber of play. You're looking at that, and then you're also looking now at the linebacker position. The linebacker position right now, you're missing now Myles Jack, right? So who's the next guy? Is it Christian Ellis? Is it Van Sumeren? There's so many question marks in what seems to be the second level of the team, right? How you guys feeling about the quarterback position right now?
I look by the optics, just based on who's on the roster. I'm taking McKee over Mariota. But does that mean that I think that the Eagles have a solid quarterback too? Absolutely not. This isn't a hot take. I mean, it's not really a hot take. It's been discussed pretty much everywhere on Philadelphia sports talk radio and things like that. But like, how bad of an idea would it be to go into a free agency and kind of just get a quarterback that can settle into a 3-2 role? Because you are looking for somebody to mentor a younger quarterback, maybe like McKee, right? We're not trying to get somebody obviously who's going to be stepping in and and combating Hurts. Like Hurts is, one if not like an elite, like top 3 quarterback in the league. So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, and you can hold your opinion for however you think. I don't think bringing in Foles is a terrible idea. You can sit there and say like, oh, well, can't you remember the last time that Foles was here and all the, the disregard he had after the Super Bowl? Well, I think that had a lot more to do with Wentz than it did with Foles. So my thing is,
I think it had to do with the fans more than it had to do with Wentz.
Well, that's fair too. But I think that had a lot more to do with Wentz because he couldn't handle it afterwards. You saw him kind of mentally crumble in the city of Philadelphia. It takes a mentally strong person, and Hurts is him.
We're acting as though he didn't win again, I think we're misconstruing the problems that Carson Wentz had. Yes, the Foles piece was a big problem, but he also answered the bell a year later. They won the division without a single 500-yard receiver. That doesn't
And he was
just
praised
happen.
for that. And he was heavily praised for that.
You're right. He was praised for that. And what did the Eagles? And granted, the Eagles were absolutely right to draft Jalen Hurts. They clearly made the right decision. But what did they do immediately in the draft following him winning the division by himself?
They got Jalen. They got the insurance.
They drafted another quarterback
decision.
They made a smart decision for the organization. But think about if you're the starting quarterback you say, you know what? My backup won the Super Bowl for me, even though I essentially got him to that point. And then I win the division by myself. I prove that I am worthy of being a franchise quarterback, and the team immediately drafts my replacement in the same draft. We can argue time and time again. They're clearly in the right. The organization was clearly in the right to value Hurts's leadership over Wentz's because it worked out exactly as they expected. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it was it was not needed at the time following a division title in 2019.
I think it was more needed than what you think, because if you're a starting quarterback and the first thing you're thinking is, oh, they drafted a quarterback that can, and you're afraid that he's going to take your spot. That's the mentality that I don't want on my team.
I'm not saying that
organization is fantastic for that.
But not only that, like we also got to remember, like, and again, same thing with McNabb, same thing with Cunningham. I love Wentz when he first came out when he was doing his thing, right? But the issue was Wentz was, listen, the best ability for any football player is availability. Wentz wasn't as available after the injury, and that was a key thing. That moment in 2019 when he went down against the Seahawks with the concussion, yes, freak accident, yes,
cheap shot,
super
bad,
big cheap shot.
Yeah,
I completely agree with that. But the short hand is McCown went in, right? We thought the Eagles were going to pull it off with McCown, but he's playing on a torn hamstring
too.
So ideally, from Howie's mindset, yes, they drafted a quarterback way too early, but it did pan out. But at the same time, it's kind of like, hey, like, what if Wentz goes down again? But what if he goes down defeated? What if he goes down permanently? What if this guy's mentally done after his next injury? Are we going to actually rebuild over the next 3 to 4 years, or should we just accelerate a little bit by having a guy like Jalen Hurts who can be a dual threat guy, which was becoming a new fad because of Lamar Jackson, because of I always get his freaking name wrong, Taysom Hill. It was becoming the thing, right? To have a guy like this in your quarterback room, and it just panned out where Wentz was exactly what they thought he was. He was defeated. He was mentally defeated because the injuries were piling against him. Mentally defeated because the system. Let's not forget about that. The Doug Peterson, Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman dynamic was not working because
it was
Jeffrey. They were pushing people onto Doug. Doug was pushing his people onto them. It just wasn't working. It was all collapsing. So it piled on Wentz, and he couldn't take it no more. And it affected him mentally. It affected him physically as well. He's not the same player he was. But at the same time, listen, if you're shopping for car insurance, are you going to get the local guy? Or are you going to get the guy the big market guy that you see on every commercial that actually has more people covered than anybody else? You're going to get the big guy, right? Regardless of the price, you're going to pay that progressive money or the Geico money. And that's what the Eagles did. They paid for the progressive money or the Geico money with Jalen Hurts.
We're going back to what happened in 2020 and 2019. But the question that Eric said of should they go after Nick Foles?
I don't agree with that. Sorry,
here's the thing.
Look at the free agent quarterbacks that are available right now, and you tell me which ones that you would go for outside.
But again, let me just really quick.
Go ahead. I'll go right after Nick. Go ahead.
Signing a free agent quarterback to back up Jalen Hurts is one thing. You are throwing in a titanium level explosion in the locker room you bring Nick Foles back. You absolutely are, Eric.
You're comparing Jalen Hurts' mindset to Carson Wentz.
I wouldn't agree with that.
No. I'm not comparing his mindset. I'm comparing the city. And the minute Jalen Hurts has one bad game, thousands of pitchforks will be on Broadway demanding that Nick Foles get another shot to be the starting quarterback.
Well, they would go to South Street, but that's not what they would do either.
I don't think they'll turn on Jalen Hurts.
They're not going to sit there and look at Jalen Hurts and say, "Oh, he had one bad game. Let's turn him down." Like Wentz was trying to play. You got to understand, Wentz was trying to play hero ball and failed miserably for a long time. Mm-hmm. And then Hurts walked onto the field because Wentz walked himself off the field pretty much with his performance. There was a lot of things that Wentz lost his job. Wentz lost his job before Hurts won his job. That's the difference there.
My thing with Foles is like the reason I would disagree with Foles right now is because we saw Gardner Minshew last year and it didn't work at all. And I personally don't think Foles will work with this system, even though he is a little bit experienced with the RPO. It just wouldn't mesh what the Eagles are trying to do. Mariota, and it's me my take of the day. Eagles stick with Mariota. You stick with him because he has not played against. He has not played behind the first team offense. He hasn't played with AJ Brown on the field, Devontae Smith. He hasn't played with the first team offensive line. We haven't seen that. So if you're playing with a second team offensive line that just is not fully there, he's full of a lot of young guys, a lot of inexperience, you're gonna be running for your life, which he has. Which is why I'm not completely off that boat. And I rather keep Mariota that way he can actually be a part of McKee's growth. Yeah, Tanner McKee, right? McKee's growth. That way next year you have McKee and Hurts, and you have a cheaper backup. I don't agree with going to anybody in free agency. Just right, it's too little, too late for me in the preseason. You have too much, on the line with the season like 2 weeks away. Foles, the only reason I don't agree with Foles is just because I don't think he's built for this system, and I don't. Foles won't have the same impact that he had on Wentz. The reason being is because Jalen Hurts has completely taken the city by storm, nationally, globally at this point. Like the guy he's creepily becoming the face of the NFL, with the NFL now wanting it to be him. Like that's literally what's happening right now.
And there's another dynamic to it. I mean, Philadelphia never won a Super Bowl. That's one thing that you look at when Foles was the guy to do it, even though Wentz got you there. Foles was the one to do it. So you want to talk about the overreaction or bring your pitchforks. We won the Super Bowl. If you win your second one and Hurts is doing it, then that's fantastic. We're going to keep Hurts around. If Foles does it again, where you're going to understand that Foles is 35 and Hurts has a whole career ahead of him, you're going to keep Hurts around too. Like it's not going to be the barnstorm that it was.
But again, I'll end it at this end of the point of this. The only time I want to see Nick Foles ever talked about in Philadelphia again is when he signs his one-day contract to retire as an Eagle and he gets his number 9 retired. That's the only time, because everything else, and you open up the conversation in talk radio, in the streets, it doesn't matter how good Jalen Hurts is. It doesn't matter how great a leader he is. I am on the train of saying he is up there and he's getting closer. If he wins a title, his overall body of work has surpassed McNabb in four years. If he wins a title this year, it's absolutely like that because he's been phenomenal. That being said, I don't want to jinx him. However, the other piece of that is I don't want anybody trying to, they could start this guy and he made this errant throw and Nick Foles wouldn't have done that in a big game. Blah, 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 blah. End the conversation there. Let him retire, end his run, and be happy for what he did in 2017.
One thing
he could sign a contract and be a backup quarterback and then retire in Philadelphia.
Well, now two things I want to ask. First thing, I don't think the media could pull that off on Jalen Hurts because I feel like the media fears Jalen Hurts more than they feared Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was a nice guy that you couldn't piss off. Jalen Hurts is a guy like you try to piss him off, he's going to put you in his place right there. Put you in place right there, and he's not going to care what you feel about it. Second thing is, do we feel like Nick, and this is going to be completely off the rails, Nick Foles, does he get his jersey retired in Philadelphia?
Yes, because he won the Super Bowl.
First
time in franchise history with resounding yes.
And the other thing is this: it's not just about his time in 2017. It's also because we forget that at one point in his early career, he was considered the next franchise quarterback. Throwing 27 touchdowns, 2 picks, winning the division in 2013. He was on the way to leading the team to the division title the very next year before he broke his collarbone. He was a very, very good Eagles quarterback. He's a top 5 Eagles quarterback. Whether you want to put him at 2 or 3, it's perfectly up for debate. I certainly think he's top 2 right behind McNabb. But he absolutely is. When you outduel Tom Brady in the Super Bowl and Bill Belichick's defense, and you give Philadelphia its first Super Bowl since 1960, you better have his jersey retired.
I don't know. I think it's a little bit overdone. I mean, how many seasons did Nick? Good seasons did Nick?
That's what I was going to say too. Before we get run away.
How many?
4.
4 good seasons. Are we sure about this?
Partials.
If here's the thing, what constitutes a good season with him?
A season. I'm not talking playoffs. I'm talking about season.
He only played he didn't even play a full year. He hasn't played a full year of football as a starting quarterback in NFL history.
So let's start with there, right?
Right.
He has 3 playoff runs. The first one when he threw 27-2, right? He lost against the Saints. Yeah. The second one was the Super Bowl run, which was phenomenal, and I will never take that away from him. The third one was when they lost against the Saints in that round because Alshon Jeffrey dropped the ball. I don't know, like this. I get it, and forgive me, Philly, for saying this. I get it. He brought the Eagles a Super Bowl. I get it. I completely get it. But I don't think you retire the guy's jersey. I just don't.
I would based on that, but I don't think that he's.
I don't think he's definitely not top
quarterback and one of the top quarterbacks in Eagles history. I can't say that based on, a sample size that's very impressive, but a sample size nonetheless.
Yes.
So that's really what it comes down to.
His sample size blows out every other guy outside.
Yeah, but it's a sample size.
How?
It's still a sample size. He had a very good sample size, and he played in very, very high pressure situations, and he won those games. But the matter is, what longevity did he have with Philadelphia? Even at his best, he was gone in an eyelash. He was gone before he can throw 10 picks of Chip Kelly. He came back and played about 10 games.
If we're really going to go here and say longevity it should be a demarcation point for NFL honors, let's say it, a retired jersey as an NFL honor, then Terrell Davis has no reason to be in the Hall of Fame. Terrell Davis had 3 dynamic seasons and then did nothing. It was 3 years for Terrell Davis.
But 3 dynamic seasons.
3 dynamic seasons
27
and a
and
Super
2,
Bowl
and then
victory.
you go out. Hold on.
And by the way, we're saying
27-2.
Foles should be in the Hall of Fame. That's what I'm saying. Because he's won a Super Bowl, the first Super Bowl for a franchise.
No, I'm saying he should have his jersey retired. Absolutely.
I'm sorry, not in the Hall of Fame. I mean his jersey retired. I apologize.
I think the jersey retirement.
I think it should.
It's a stretch. I think it's a stretch, honestly, because let's look at it like this. Let's talk numbers because you're big on the numbers, right? His first season, we understand it was the Michael Vick, Nick Foles thing. They were going back and forth.
The end of the Andy Reid era, yeah.
All right, so QB record 1-5, completion percentage 60%, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Not impressive. Second season,
it was pretty good for a rookie quarterback that year. In that spot with how bad that team was, because they went 4-12, they were awful.
Mark Sanchez
did not play poorly.
Mark Sanchez put these kind of numbers as a regular quarterback. Like let's look
at
it like that.
2014.
Let's look at it. 2013, we're talking about 8-2. He had a great season, 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, phenomenal. Great season, right? Lost in the playoffs. Season after that, QB record is 6-2. Only played 8 games, 13 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. That's the end of his stint in Philly. After that, completely derailed off it. Like literally, numbers look terrible in St. Louis, Kansas City. Came back to Philly, which we know the story in Philly. 2 seasons. He started 3 games during the season, played in 7 games total. Next season, 2018, started 5 games, which he started 4-1, but they went to Carson Wentz. He has 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions there. This is not a jersey retiring guy just because he won a Super Bowl, in my opinion. And again, it has nothing against him. I just don't like the Ring of Honor. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Make him memorable. He has a statue outside of the field. That's his retirement right there. The guy has the only statue outside of Philly.
I think it's worth retiring his jersey in Philadelphia, and I'll give you another reason why. You can pick whatever number you want these days. So, I mean, geez, for the rest of the time, if we don't have a Philadelphia quarterback wearing the number 9, that's fine. I don't care.
I don't think they'll ever give his number away. Don't get me wrong. We haven't had 12 either.
They'll just retire it. That's
the thing. That's what I was about to say. They haven't given the number 12 jersey out since Cunningham.
And 25 as well.
Under no circumstances should number 9 ever be worn again. And if that's the case, retire the number.
And I would say,
then if that's the case,
before 12 because
you're retiring LaShawn McCoy if that's the case. You're retiring 12 as well if that's the case.
First off, I think you should give 12 away. I think that's ridiculous. But regardless, 25, 25. His number's already retired. But 25.
I'm retired and give it away again.
That's your team. That's your all-time leading rusher. He beat out Steve Van Buren, Westbrook, Montgomery, all these guys. McCoy absolutely should have an argument for his jersey retirement.
Absolutely, and I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying that that's another number that they're not allowing others to wear. It's not like number 10 where they're just handing it out to every single person that comes on the team.
Or number 11. Let's put it that way. You talk about Norm Van Brocklin.
I think four running backs on our team should be number 25. I think every running back on our team should be number 25. Nick, how about you? How about that? To the point where we don't even know anymore. Actually, you know what? 11 people on offense is 25 or 5. Pick one, and then everybody on defense could be whatever. Just whatever.
92. Everyone.
Yeah, it could be 90.
Reggie White's number.
I just heavily disagree with the concept that we need to retire Foles' number. I mean, he got the statue when that statue should have never happened, but it's a memorable moment.
Do you retire Ertz's number?
Yeah, as an Eagle, yeah.
I mean, they're giving it out already, so I don't know.
That's fair though. They did give it out already, but like I honestly believe if I'm in agreement with Nick that the Eagles should retire number 9, then they should by far retire 86.
Okay, but listen,
I agree. I think Ertz has to get his
time, and I don't disagree with that at all. I think Ertz deserves it because the longevity that Ertz had with this team, first and foremost, the numbers Ertz had with this team, first and foremost, he was consistently the best player on the field for this team since he took over the reins for Selleck. Even in his last days in Philly, was probably one of the better players on this team.
And when did he take over for Selleck?
I don't know. It was a while ago.
No. Let's be quite honest. He took over for Selleck in 2016 was probably that year that he took over when Wentz came in because Wentz loved targeting Ertz specifically. If that's the case, then Ertz had 3 dominant years as a number 1 wide receiver. That doesn't speak to me of longevity.
Actually, he had looking at 1, 2, 3.
They should retire number 96, dude.
Not even so. Listen, all right.
I despise you.
Time out.
That's why I was laughing on mute. I couldn't help myself.
So let's look at Ertz's numbers really quick. From 2014, 702 receiving yards. Oh, sorry. 2014, 702 receiving yards. 2015, 853 receiving yards. 2016, 816. 2017, 824. 2018, 1163. 2019, 916. 2020, during this time here, 335. That screams better numbers than what Nick Foles had in Philly. He was the best guy on the field from what it looks like to be. What 24? The best tight end on the field since 2014, and he played in more games than Nick Foles in Philly. And again, like they both should be
retired.
Nick, give me your address right now, Nick. I'm on my way. Give me your address, bro.
All four of the long-term Eagles right now, the core 4, Ertz and Foles. Those are the guys that get the retired number.
No.
About Corey Clement, dude.
No.
What you mean? He had a great season. Super Bowl
I thought it was fantastic.
No, he didn't have a great season. He had a great Super Bowl, and that was it.
Yeah, it's great. I loved it.
It was a great season.
I love all this catch.
Jay Ajayi was more needed for that game.
I love all of his catch.
He made 3 catches the entire game. He had over 100 yards.
Was it 3? I literally remember only the 1.
It was 3 for over 100 yards.
Listen.
Oh, that's sick, actually.
Nick
Foles,
they
should retire him.
Nick Foles won a Super Bowl for the Eagles, and I will forever be grateful for that. He has a statue in Philadelphia. They're never gonna let anybody wear the number, but I don't see his number hanging from the rafters. Like it just doesn't click for me. I do see Zach Ertz. I get Donovan McNabb. I don't get why Westbrook's number's not hanging from the rafters, which apparently
I think Westbrook should be on there.
Like, how the hell is his number not in the rafters? And
but if you do him, you have to do McCoy.
Absolutely, and I agree. You should do McCoy.
I agree.
Okay, I'm glad we're agreeing.
We got to go back down to Ricky Waters now.
No, Ricky Waters. No.
Yo, what about Deuce Staley, brother?
Just creeping down the Randall Cunningham hole again, are we?
Yeah, dude, I like Randall Cunningham. I think the whole offense should wear 12.
I feel like
bury all the 80s and early 90 Eagles in a trash can where we don't have to listen to them ever again.
How dare you talk about Mike Quick and Harold Cunningham like that?
So pick
Harold Cunningham.
So real quick. So let's cease the troll real quick. Let's just go back to the that Super Bowl team.
Wait, can we agree for everybody in the chat?
2 offense and 2 defense from that team who you would put up for retirement in the jersey.
Wait, so from the Super Bowl team?
From the Super Bowl team that played in the Super Bowl, the winning Super Bowl.
Which one? The Jalen Hurts Super Bowl or the Nick Foles Super Bowl?
No, Nick Foles, the one we won.
Why you gotta say it like that, Eric?
Because we
Graham Cox, Foles, Kelsey.
Yeah, I was kind of in agreement with that. If not Foles, then I was going to bounce back to Ertz. But really,
one of those. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say a name that's not gonna agree with anybody. So I agree with Graham because Brandon Graham to me is probably the best, one of the best.
I mean, he kind of locked it.
He's one of the greatest play in Eagles history.
Not only that, but
greatest play in Eagles history.
His story from going to be possibly in a bust to be one of the best pass rushers in the league was phenomenal, right? You have Fletcher Cox, obviously, Jason Kelsey, obviously, Lane Johnson, obviously. Oh, yeah. Why not Malcolm Jenkins?
No.
Why not?
So but also the way that it. Well, see, I don't want to sit there. I don't want that to be his legacy, though. Fuck, that's hard.
What? Wait. What be his legacy?
The way that it finished in Philly wasn't necessarily the best terms.
It definitely wasn't because of the money.
His legacy, right? You're right. The bigger body of work is at the time that he put in that jersey, so it's kind of hard. Like I'm torn on that.
It's a very good argument.
Here's what I'm trying to say. Look, Jay Fizz, the Kangaroo Man, finally said it himself. If Nick was a starter and had the season Carson did, then for sure. But he was a backup who just went off. He went
off against the greatest quarterback of all time.
It still doesn't say Hall of Fame. It doesn't say Hall of Fame. It just doesn't.
Tom Brady didn't play defense.
Exactly.
Hold on. Okay.
Tom Brady had a big.
He went up against the greatest defensive mind in NFL history.
Matt Patricia's not that great. Stop that.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick. Please stop.
Yeah.
Matt Patricia's pencil writes his own plays. God. He doesn't write it. Listen, Linda. Tom Brady had over 500 yards in that game, right or wrong?
Both defenses fell asleep in that game, right or wrong.
Yeah, that really pissed me off. But I'm glad that you just pulled it off. But listen, guys. Come on. Nick, look at me. Look at me. Look at me.
Look at me like how my dog
I'm waiting for this take. I'm waiting for this take.
It still doesn't say Hall of Fame.
What
I'm sorry. It says retirement.
Let me rewind. It still doesn't say jersey retirement. The number 9 will never be worn again. But it will not. It does. I'm not saying it will not because it could happen. It does not need to be retired in the rafters.
So let me ask you this then. I'm pulling up Brandon Graham's stats right now.
You leave BG out of this.
No, let's bring him into this conversation.
No, you leave BG out of
bring
this.
Brandon Graham into this conversation. Because if we're talking about longevity, if we're talking about great seasons,
they all have better seasons than Nick Foles. He had one good year with the Eagles.
No. That's not talking about 1 year.
Did we not
I'm
just say
talking
that?
about longevity.
Yeah, longevity was one good season.
You want to know who they should retire?
Brandon Graham had 2 years of dominant Pro Bowl football.
You want to know who they should retire?
Dan Brocklin?
Nelson Aguilar.
You stop
I have to go. It's 9 o'clock.
Wait, is it number 13 Aguilar or number 17 Aguilar?
It could be any.
I gotta go. I don't want to think about this anymore.
Anyway, but Nick, this is just a tired.
Wait, to answer CJ's question, yes, I'm retiring 55, 91, and 65. And don't forget 62.
And 62.
And then 86 just to piss Nick off.
I'm not saying.
And on top of that, we're retiring number 12 while we're at it. We're gonna have a big old parade for everybody.
Burn 12.
Dude, I got mad jerseys. I'll just hang them up in the rafters myself. I don't care. I got 86. Let's do it. Give me a ladder.
You know what? While we're at it, we're retiring Travis Fulgham. He had one good year, right?
He had 4 good games. I'm tired.
He broke records.
Gentlemen, it's 9 o'clock.
Oh, we are foul for this. This is awesome.
Okay, we've gone completely off the rails because
it was fantastic.
Nick is defending Nick, but we do have to pick Nick's brain because So Nick is our lead writer for the Eagles team, but he also does work for AMNY.
Why? Yep.
And he covers the Jets, and the Jets have been a focal point this offseason because of the Aaron Rodgers trade, because of the dynamic that they have over there. But not only because of that, but also HBO has hosted the Jets for like the 25th time on Hard Knocks. From your point of view, just kind of just bringing us into how it is over there with all those cameras there first and foremost, right? But also with with the media availability, like what's been your experience like over there so far?
They've been fantastic. I would argue that the Jets have about as well run of an organization, communications, PR, staff-wise, that I have seen in the NFL to date. They have been truly, truly fantastic. Hard Knocks, the Jets have been abundantly clear that they are not going to give them full-on coverage throughout, so they're not showing when players get cut and whatnot. That's something that was done by the Lions the year prior.
Isn't that like historically been a part of Hard Knocks, like the main key component?
They got rid of that. Yeah, they got rid of that. So it's very dwindled back, but it's still a very good feature. So definitely check it out. But I've been very, very blessed and very, very impressed with how the Jets are running their stuff.
What's the for a fancy word for it? What's the ambiance like once the Jets got Aaron Rodgers and the whole deal? How is that magnification for the team?
So I was actually an intern for Jets Insider back in 2015 when I was in college, 2017 when I was in college, and I walked into a practice and the starting quarterbacks were Bryce Petty, Ryan Fitzpatrick. No, this wasn't Ryan Fitzpatrick. It was Christian Hackenberg and Bryce Petty.
Oh my God, I remember the Christian Hackenberg hype.
And I kid you not, both quarterbacks hit multiple press on the side of the field with inaccurate throws. It was just awful. And it's the reason why the Jets went and signed Ryan Fitzpatrick to the contract that they actually did. So that's what I had to go off of for Jets quarterbacks.
So Ryan Fitzpatrick got the contract because he didn't hit a media person in the head?
Exactly.
Damn, that's awful.
But also, in fairness, he had a great year that first year with Todd Bowles. He was very good. But the other piece of this is I've seen Aaron Rodgers now for the better part of about 4 or 5 weeks. And oh my God. I consider myself an NFL historian. I always pride myself in knowing NFL history, being able to use historical concepts to predict the future and predict present outcomes. Aaron Rodgers has made me a neophyte when it comes to my knowledge of NFL history. The way this guy talks about the game, I will say right now that every word that came out of Green Bay about him being a bad leader, bad teammate, weirdo, it's very, very wrong. Very wrong. And he has been phenomenal. He has been very open with the media. People who thought that he couldn't handle the New York media have been laughed at for the last 2 weeks. This has been a team that I truly believe has become competent and become very well respected in a matter of 5 months. Robert Saleh is very respected as a head coach. A lot of people like Saleh as a defensive mind. And now that you have Aaron Rodgers there, it completely turns the tide. This Jets team, if there's one team that probably beats Philadelphia in terms of its depth, it's that defensive line in New York. That defensive line for the Jets is absolutely insane.
Now, you spoke about the defensive line and how you feel about that. What about their offensive line protecting Rodgers?
So, very good question there. Originally, for the first 3 weeks of training camp, it was absolutely horrific. And it was one of those things where people were looking at it like, oh my God, the Jets are going to implode because they can't protect Rodgers. What people kind of forget, though, is their best offensive lineman was coming back from knee surgery. Dwayne Brown, probably their second best defensive lineman, was coming back from a shoulder injury. All 5 are now healthy, and all 5 are expected to start. Actually, a breaking news piece just went out on AM New York about Dwayne Brown coming off the PUP list for tomorrow. So that offensive line is significantly better than people are giving it credit for. And I will say the Eagles have an undefeated record against the Jets in their history. This probably is going to be the toughest matchup they'll ever have, dating back to the Namath days in the 60s.
Brian, are the Eagles and Jets playing this season? I don't have the schedule right in front of me right now.
Yeah, they're playing. They're playing over here in Jersey, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, I believe week 6.
Yeah. I have a serious question.
Uh-oh. He got really close to the mic. I'm nervous.
Do we get to see Nick on Hard Knocks?
Yo. I have no idea.
What do you mean? Nick, if there's cameras around me, I'm gonna peek, Yo,
you can peek. I have not been looking to get in front of the cameras. I've been there to do my job, give unbiased content. Listen,
you did something in front of the camera, didn't you?
There's no way. Absolutely
you did something, didn't you?
Did you just say I peed? That's absolutely ridiculous.
I'm like, he definitely sprung a leak. Went on the other side.
Rogers on camera, like, what is that?
No, you know what reminds me of is draft day on the live stream here. That's what it reminds me of. Shout out, Chris.
Oh, I will say, obviously I'm not a Jets fan, and I believe that actually strengthens my reporting because I'm not speaking from a fan perspective of having that heart of going, I really want this player to be good. And that sometimes happens with my Philadelphia Eagles reporting, where I will be inclined to take the side of a player or take the side of a coach.
Actually, so Nick is the only person I know that not only is not the only person I know that's passionate, right? But Nick, you can actually feel Nick's passion when he's talking about a player because when Nick puts everything in caps, Nick, you can hear Nick yelling through like the internet. Like you just feel like
it's projecting. It's projecting. It's not yelling.
It's George Costanza yelling at you. That's what it is. And you can actually feel it. That Nick is the only person I know that can actually like yell through text. That's all I can really say.
I'm telling you, when I do that, I am never. My wife now can even tune in and say this, but I do not yell. I rarely yell. What happens is I'm a very passionate person,
which I said I complimented.
Right. So when I get passionate about something, what I do is I project, and my projection is loud. That's not yelling. That's just projecting my thoughts and my passion onto other people.
Speaking of projections, what is your projection for the Jets in 2023?
What
a segue, Eric. Thank you, guys.
I will say.
By the way, that's yelling.
I will say that the Jets are the one team, and I truly believe the one team that can beat Kansas City. And I'm not being facetious about this because their defensive line, let's do the math here. Philadelphia's defensive line, you've got Hassan, Josh Sweat, Cox, Carter, Brandon Graham, Jordan Davis, and Milton Williams, right? I would say 8 top guys that you can trust game in and game out. Would you say so?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
This is who the Jets have. John Franklin Myers, Carl Lawson, Jermaine Johnson, who's going to be insane this year, Will McDonald, the rookie. Who's the other one? Bryce Huff, whose statistical capabilities as a third down pass rusher are better than Brandon Graham's last season, and Graham had a great year. That's 5. Then you add in Quinnen Williams, who is probably the second best interior defensive lineman outside of Aaron Donald, Quentin Jefferson, Solomon Thomas, Al Woods. That's not even adding the fact that they have Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, CJ Mosley, and Quincy Williams. This defense is probably the most complete defense in the NFL. Their offense just needs to be average. And that's what leads me to believe that I think if there's a team to beat Kansas City, it's probably them. And
so you have the Jets winning the division.
Yes.
Yeah, I would.
Over the Bills and Dolphins. Okay.
Yeah, I think Buffalo was in for a major downward spike. And I think the Dolphins, while they have the offensive capabilities of dominating anybody, do I trust Tua to A, stay healthy, and B, be consistent enough to win these close games? I don't see that happening. So that's part of the equation. And then it comes down to, okay, who in the NFC can stop the Jets? And in reality, the only team that has the offensive line to really give the Jets a problem, it's Philadelphia. granted, things can change, and Philadelphia could have a bad year with a tough schedule. But if everyone stays healthy, I think we're on a collision course to seeing the Cowboys and Eagles face off in the NFC title game, and then the Jets and the Chiefs in the AFC title game. We could very well be seeing a Jets-Eagles Super Bowl this year. I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, it's nice to know that there's going to be a measuring stick game between the Jets and the Eagles to kind of see what's what. But you're right. In a lot of ways, the Jets kind of did rebuild relatively quickly, sort of like how the Eagles, did as well from the time that Hurts was drafted to now. So yeah, like I'm excited, man. As far as projecting to Philadelphia, I think that at worst, their bottom is like maybe 5 losses. Like I think they're going to have a pretty strong season once again. But also we're talking about a team that should be contending for the Super Bowl in the NFC. The AFC I think has a lot more of a competition at the top spot, including the Jets, because of how much they've kind of just jumped up. Obviously with Kansas City as well, but when I look at the NFC, I don't really see too much I'm worried about, taking Philly's place if Philadelphia just simply stays healthy. So I will say there's one thing really quick, Brian. There's one game that I'm really concerned about in its opening day for Philadelphia. Going into New England, a lot of people think New England as a team that isn't really serious anymore. But that defense is very, very good. That defense is actually extremely underrated. And if there's one game that they would steal that year, because it's Tom Brady Day, essentially honoring Tom Brady since his retirement, that's the one game where I look at and go, if they end up losing that game, that could be a very, very poor start, and you can't lose these winnable games against these average quarterbacks when you've got murder's row of Mahomes, Prescott, Allen, San Francisco, Seattle, and the Giants all in a row. Is the Giants and Cowboys really murder's row? Yes. Okay. It's the NFC East. Absolutely. Okay.
So we're back to the retirement of the jersey, aren't we? We're back here.
I'm not gonna. Nope. No, we're not.
No,
retire Prescott's jersey, brothers.
Oh God.
Anyway, don't do that.
Nick, we definitely want to thank you for giving us that insight first and foremost. Also, congratulations to getting married, recently married.
Thank you. Oh, I do want to show one thing. I don't know if I can show it.
You're not allowed to show anything for the bachelor party. No, because I didn't go to the bachelor party.
It's not a bachelor party.
I wasn't invited to the bachelor party.
This is my wedding ring. My wedding ring. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Can you get a little light on it?
It's midnight green or Kelly green.
It's midnight green.
Don't say Kelly green. You can't say Kelly green.
Oh, Kelly green gets you a lifetime ban. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's not going to work. Anyway, there's a midnight green line in the middle.
Nick, it kind of looks like the Jets colors.
Yeah, man, it kind of looks like Jets green.
It looks a little Jetsy to me. I don't know,
AM and Y bought you a ring, dude.
I hate you both.
Nick, dude, it's always a pleasure to have you, talk to you. It's just fantastic time. Fantastic vibes.
Yeah, I think Nick is the only person I could argue with and actually laugh and have fun with.
Dude, it's fantastic. Like half of this podcast, when anybody goes back and listens to it, is just there's good stuff here. Obviously, talking about both teams, but most of it's just trash and how Nelson Aguilar should be, retired.
The name of this episode should be Murders. It should be Murders Row.
That's fantastic.
That's a great podcast name.
It is fantastic because this whole podcast was Murderers Row.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, Nick, thanks for coming on. We're well over time. Yeah, I mean, I want to say we're back next week with the guys. I know Morgan is going through his training camp right now. Zach couldn't make it because of personal situation going on. But yeah, we should be back next week. Definitely bringing you guys the update on the 53-man roster as well, and expectations for what we expect from the Eagles this season. But yeah, until then, I'm Brian Cameron alongside Eric Reese and Nikki, not number 9, Faria.
Uh-oh.
Hey, you like that one, right? That was a little fancy.
For all that, all I got to say is 2 words. Go Birds!
Yes, sir.